Left at the altar for being not good enough, Maya Benton thought her world had shattered, until a helicopter landed and a billionaire stepped out, claiming her as his daughter. What follows is a breathtaking transformation, from humiliation to empowerment, from rejection to legacy. Betrayal, truth, justice, and the quiet fire of a woman reclaiming her worth. This story will leave you breathless. Who is Maya Benton, and how did she rise from ashes to power? You'll want to hear every word. Tell us where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories that stir the soul. The morning sun poured gently through the narrow window of the small upstairs bedroom, wrapping the faded floral wallpaper and secondhand furniture in a golden glow. Maya Benton sat on the edge of her bed, barefoot, her fingers tangled in the hem of her silk robe, heart fluttering between joy and terror. Today was the day she had dreamed of since she was a girl. Today she was marrying Julian Carrington, the man who had whispered promises under starlit skies, who had told her she was enough, more than enough, even in a world that constantly made her feel otherwise. She took a deep breath and glanced at the dress hanging from the closet door. It was simple, elegant, and nothing like the custom gowns of Julian's high society friends. But to Maya, it was perfect, a symbol of love over luxury, of meaning over money. Her mother, Charlotte, had helped her pick it out after weeks of bargain hunting and late-night stitching. Maya reached for her phone instinctively, wanting to text Julian, to say something sweet, reassuring, but she hesitated. He had been distant lately, blaming stress, family pressure. Still, she told herself, love could weather that. They could weather anything. Charlotte knocked softly and stepped in with a tray, toast, tea, and a tiny dish of strawberries. "Big day," she said, trying to keep her voice light. Her eyes shimmered with emotion. She set the tray down and came to sit beside Maya, brushing a hand gently down her daughter's arm. "You sure you're ready?" Maya looked up at her mother, the one constant in her life through every storm. "I love him, Mama," she said softly. "That's all that matters." Charlotte smiled, but there was something in her expression, a tension behind the love, like a question left unspoken. Maya didn't press. There would be time for answers later. Right now, there was a church waiting. The ride to the Carrington Estate Chapel was quiet. Maya stared out the window of the rented sedan, her thoughts a whirl of memories and half-formed hopes. The estate came into view, grand, sprawling, intimidating. The chapel alone looked like something out of a royal wedding. High arches, pristine stained glass, and guests already gathering in designer suits and glittering heels. Maya clutched her bouquet tighter. She stepped out of the car, her mother smoothing down her veil. Guests turned to look, most with mild curiosity, a few with thinly veiled disdain. She caught snippets of conversations. "She cleans up well. Is that really the dress? She's so different." Maya straightened her spine, lifted her chin. She wouldn't let them see her flinch. Inside, the chapel was breathtaking. Rows of white roses lined the aisle, and a string quartet played something soft and romantic. Her best friend Nina, in a pale lavender dress, greeted her with a tight hug and a whisper of encouragement. "You've got this, May?" In the bridal room, Maya tried to steady herself. She inhaled the scent of the roses, felt the weight of her dreams pressing in. When the cue came, she walked slowly, deliberately, down the aisle. The stained glass bathed her in soft colors like blessings from another world. At the altar, Julian stood waiting. He looked handsome in his tailored tuxedo, but his smile was thin, his shoulders tense. Still, Maya held on to her belief. Love conquers all. She took her place beside him, her heart racing, but something was wrong. His hand in hers felt cold, impersonal. He wouldn't meet her eyes. As the pastor spoke, Julian grew more restless. Then came the moment. "Julian Carrington, do you take Maya Benton?" He pulled his hand away. A silence fell. Maya's breath caught. I can't do this," Julian said. His voice echoed too loud. "She doesn't belong in this family. She's not one of us." The world stopped, and just like that, the dream shattered. For a few long seconds, Maya couldn't move. The weight of Julian's words pressed down on her chest like a stone. She heard nothing, saw nothing. Just the echo of rejection reverberating through the ornate chapel, mocking every hope she'd ever dared to believe. Her hand trembled at her side, the bouquet slipping through her fingers and landing on the marble floor with a soft final thud. Around her, whispers erupted like wildfire. Shocked murmurs, stifled gasps, phones raised by the vultures in designer gowns and tailored suits. Somewhere behind her, her mother cried out her name. Somewhere beside her, Nina was trying to step forward. But Maya stood frozen, anchored to the cold floor by the collapse of her own wedding. And then, the rumble began. At first it was distant, a low, pulsing thunder that made the stained glass vibrate ever so slightly. People began turning, confused. Heads craned toward the arched ceiling. Outside, a gust of wind blew open the double doors at the far end of the aisle. Sunlight blasted into the chapel, brilliant and sudden, washing out the somber hues and silencing the room. A helicopter was descending onto the estate lawn. Gasps rose as its shadow passed over the stained windows. The engine's roar grew louder, overwhelming even the chatter, the music, the shame. Maya blinked against the light, her eyes still blurry with disbelief. She barely registered the blur of security moving toward the entrance, clearing space with swift, wordless efficiency. Then he appeared. A tall man stepped into the chapel, silhouetted by the brilliant light behind him. He was dressed in a perfectly cut charcoal suit, his silver hair glinting at the temples, his gait slow but commanding. Two other men flanked him, similarly dressed, bodyguards, clearly. But the presence that drew every eye in the room was his alone. He carried with him the kind of authority that didn't need to be explained. It simply existed. In every stride, every breath, every glance. He walked past the pews without a word, ignoring the sea of stunned faces. His eyes were fixed on Maya. When he reached the front, he paused before her. She blinked up at him, lost in the surreal collapse of her reality. She didn't know who he was. She didn't know why he was here. But something in his gaze, familiar, grounding, cut through the haze. "Maya Benton," he said, his voice deep, steady, unmistakably clear even in the still ringing silence. "You are my daughter." It was as if the chapel exhaled all at once. Someone dropped a glass. Another person gasped so loudly it echoed. Julian, who had begun to edge backward toward the vestry door, went rigid. Maya couldn't process what she'd just heard. Her mouth opened, then closed. Her mind refused to shape the words. "Daughter? Mama?" she whispered. Spinning in place, Charlotte had made her way to the altar at last, tears streaking down her cheeks. Her hands trembled as she reached for Maya. "I should have told you," she whispered brokenly. "I should have told you years ago. That's Maxwell Rhodes, your father." The name hit like a second thunderclap. Maya staggered back a step, barely catching herself. Maxwell Rhodes, the billionaire, the titan of finance and industry. She had seen his name in headlines, on magazine covers, whispered about in economic circles as a man who didn't lose. And now, he was here. Her father. Maxwell turned to Charlotte briefly, then back to Maya, his expression unreadable but filled with a quiet ache. "I know it's a lot, but I came as soon as I found out, and I won't let anyone hurt you again." Julian, ghost pale, took a step forward. This can't be." Maxwell turned his gaze on him, and Julian stopped mid-sentence, retreating like a boy caught red-handed. Maya looked at the man before her, then back at the cold faces around her. Something inside her shifted. An ember catching flame. She didn't say a word. She just stepped forward, took Maxwell's outstretched hand, and walked with him. Past Julian, past the whispers, past the wreckage of everything she once believed. Into something new. The helicopter's blades sliced the sky with rhythmic force as Maya clutched the seatbelt across her lap, still unsure if she was dreaming. The city below faded into grids of light and movement, but none of it registered. Beside her sat the man who had just upended her entire world, Maxwell Rhodes, the father she never knew she had. His posture was composed, his hands folded loosely in his lap, but his eyes never left her. Every now and then, Maya caught him glancing at her, as if memorizing her all over again. She turned toward the window, her thoughts churning. The dress on her body felt like a costume now, silk and lace soaked in betrayal. The memory of Julian's voice, of his mother's icy stare, of the bouquet hitting the marble, it all pulsed in the back of her mind like a bruise she couldn't stop touching. "I know this is overwhelming," Maxwell said gently, his voice deep and calm, like distant thunder. "I wish the truth had come out another way. But I couldn't let you stand there alone. Not like that." Maya turned to him, her throat tight. "Why now?" she whispered. "Why not, all those years ago?" He didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned slightly forward, his gaze filled with something raw. Your mother left without a trace. She did it to protect you, I believe that now. But I didn't stop looking. For years, I hired investigators, chased rumors, followed cold trails. Then, just last week, someone on my team brought me a wedding announcement. Your name, your picture. I knew it was you. And I came as fast as I could. Maya's heart twisted. It sounded like something from a movie, too dramatic to be true. And yet here she was, sitting in a private helicopter, flying toward an estate she couldn't even imagine, held steady by the hand of a man who just shattered the ceiling on her entire life story. The helicopter dipped lower. Through the window, rolling hills and stone buildings began to take shape. It was breathtaking. Manicured gardens, fountains, ancient oaks. A sweeping estate nestled in quiet grandeur. They landed on a broad stretch of emerald lawn where uniformed staff and black-suited security waited at a respectful distance. Maxwell helped her down. The moment her heels touched the grass, reality hit harder. This wasn't just an escape from a ruined wedding. This was a new life pressing itself into her hands, uninvited but undeniable. The estate loomed before her, a stately home of stone and ivy, its windows glowing warm in the evening light. Every detail spoke of wealth, yes, but also of permanence, of history, of care. A woman with sharp eyes and silver hair greeted them at the door. "Miss Benton," she said with a small bow, "welcome. I'm Eleanor, Mr. Rhodes's chief of staff. We've prepared your room." Maya gave a nod she didn't entirely feel and followed them inside. The house was silent in a reverent sort of way, the air filled with the scent of polished wood and fresh roses. Maxwell led her to a sitting room bathed in golden dusk light. He gestured for her to sit, then poured her a glass of water with the ease of a man used to command but not to force. "There's a lot I want to tell you," he said, sitting across from her. "But first, I want you to understand this. You have choices. You don't owe me anything. I'm not here to claim you like property. I'm here because I'm your father, and if you let me, I'd like to make up for the time we lost." Maya stared at him, her fingers tight around the cool glass. She thought of Charlotte, of the years spent stretching every dollar, of learning to be invisible in a world that never saw girls like her. And now this impossible, life-altering fork in the road. "I don't know how to trust you," she said finally, her voice low but steady. Maxwell didn't hesitate. "Then we'll start with the truth," he said. "All of it." And in that quiet, richly lit room, something began to shift. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the first flicker of possibility. The air outside the pavilion was thick with the scent of roses and impending confrontation. Maya sat beneath the curved white trellis, the reflecting pool behind her casting soft ripples in the golden afternoon light. She had chosen this place deliberately, neutral, quiet, exposed. She didn't want the meeting to feel like a trap, but she didn't want it to feel safe either. Not for him. Julian arrived 10 minutes late, a bouquet of wilting supermarket flowers clutched awkwardly in his hand. His suit was wrinkled, his collar slightly askew, and the confidence he once wore like armor was nowhere in sight. He paused a few steps away from her, unsure whether to approach. "You can sit," Maya said evenly, without rising. Her voice carried no warmth, but no hatred either, just control. He lowered himself onto the bench across from her, eyes searching her face. "You look different," he said, "stronger." Maya gave a soft, humorless laugh. Humiliation will do that to a person. Julian looked down at the flowers in his hands, then back up. "I was stupid, Maya. I panicked. My parents." "You don't get to blame them," she interrupted quietly but firmly. "You looked me in the eye and said I wasn't good enough. That's not panic, that's truth." He winced. "I was afraid of disappointing them, of what being with you would cost me." "And now?" she asked, folding her hands in her lap. "Now I realize what it already cost me." His voice cracked. "You were the best thing in my life, and I threw you away because I thought pleasing them meant everything. But they're losing everything now. My mother's barely speaking. My father's frantic." Maya's eyes narrowed slightly. "Is that why you're here? Because you lost status?" "No," he began, but faltered. "I'm here because I still love you." Maya tilted her head. "You love the version of me that didn't challenge you. The one who stayed quiet when your mother made her little comments. The one who waited for you to defend her, but never got it. You don't love me. You love how small I was willing to make myself to fit into your life." Julian's face crumpled. He looked as though he wanted to say something else, but no words came. The silence between them stretched long and taut. "I forgive you," Maya said finally, her voice gentle now. "Not for you, for me, because I don't want to carry the weight of what you did." A breeze rustled through the vines, brushing her curls across her cheek. "But I don't want you in my life," she continued. "Not now, not ever again. I have something to build, something real. And you? You'll have to learn what real love costs." She stood. The hem of her ivory dress swayed as she turned away. "Maya," Julian said hoarsely, "please." She paused for a fraction of a second, then walked on without looking back. That evening, as the sun melted into the horizon, she sat beside Maxwell on the terrace overlooking the estate. They shared tea in silence, and when she finally spoke, it was with quiet certainty. "I'm not broken," she said. Maxwell looked at her with something deeper than pride, something like awe. "No," he agreed, "you never were." The legal strike against the Carringtons began just before midnight. Maxwell's team, acting with ruthless precision, executed the corporate takeover like a symphony. The Carringtons' holdings, once protected by a web of shell companies and silent partnerships, unraveled one by one. Maya watched the news roll in from the study, reports pinging across Maxwell's secure tablet. Stock freezes. Board meetings canceled. Frozen assets. Julian's family wasn't ruined. They were exposed. Stripped of their illusions of superiority, forced to reckon with their own fragility. She wasn't celebrating. This wasn't revenge. This was balance. Justice. And the beginning of something far more important, her own legacy. The morning after the corporate takedown, sunlight spilled softly across the gardens outside Maya's window, illuminating the tall French doors with a delicate shimmer. She stood at the glass barefoot, arms wrapped loosely around herself, watching the world stir awake beneath the ancient oaks. The estate was quiet, but not the kind of stillness born from fear or control. It was the kind of silence that breathed, that made room for reflection. For rebirth. On the small table beside her, Eleanor had left a neat stack of documents, trust declarations, board appointment forms, foundation proposals, all bearing her name. Maxwell hadn't pressured her to sign anything. He'd simply said, "When you're ready, it's yours." And for the first time in her life, she felt the weight of what that meant. Not obligation, not expectation. Power. Real, undeniable, hers to shape power. She dressed simply that morning, opting for a crisp white blouse and soft gray slacks, her curls pinned up, her eyes steady. Downstairs, she found Maxwell in the study, already reviewing reports. He looked up when she entered and smiled, not the smile of a tycoon seeing an heir, but of a father welcoming his daughter. "I'm ready," she said. He didn't ask for what. He simply closed his folder and gestured toward the chair across from him. "Then let's begin." Over the next few weeks, Maya immersed herself in learning. She shadowed Maxwell during meetings, absorbing everything: financial structures, legal frameworks, philanthropic strategy. At first, she remained quiet, observant, almost too cautious. But gradually, her voice began to emerge, first in questions, then in insights, then in bold, clear opinions that left seasoned executives blinking in surprise. Where Maxwell's leadership leaned on force and vision, Maya's centered on empathy and impact. She asked different questions. Who would benefit? Who might be hurt? What legacy did each decision leave behind? Her instincts were sharp, her clarity unwavering, and people noticed. It didn't take long before murmurs began, some admiring, some wary. There were those in the old guard who viewed her as a disruption, too young, too new, too soft. But Maya didn't flinch. She didn't try to become Maxwell. She didn't need to. She was becoming herself. Under her guidance, a new initiative began to take shape. A multi-million-dollar foundation focused on educational equity and small business grants for women of color. She named it the Lucent Project, a nod to the idea that even the smallest light could pierce the darkest places. Maxwell watched the project unfold with something more powerful than pride: reverence. One late evening, after a particularly intense day of board meetings, Maya returned to the estate exhausted. She found Maxwell waiting on the back terrace, 2 glasses of wine already poured. "You did well today," he said, handing her a glass. "I was terrified," she admitted, sinking into the chair beside him. "Good," he replied with a quiet chuckle. "It means you care." They toasted, not to victory, but to endurance, to growth. As the stars blinked into view above the trees, Maya leaned back and closed her eyes. She thought about the girl who had once stood at the altar, trembling, believing that love was enough to save her. That girl no longer existed. In her place was a woman forged in fire, not bitter, but burnished, strong. She had not been rescued, she had reclaimed. Later that week, she received another request for a press interview about the Carringtons, the Rhodes estate, and her sudden rise to public visibility. Maxwell let her decide. She declined. The world didn't need another exposé. What it needed was what came next. And so she continued, building, leading, dreaming. She wasn't Julian's discarded bride or the secret daughter of a billionaire. She was Maya Benton, leader, visionary, survivor. And when she stood at the launch of the Lucent project months later, speaking before hundreds of guests, her voice rang clear, her spirit unshaken. "This is not the story of what I lost," she said. "It's the story of what I chose to become." And the world listened. In the end, Maya's journey wasn't just about wealth, power, or even revenge. It was about reclaiming dignity after betrayal, about discovering strength not handed down by legacy, but born from within. Her story reminds us that no matter how others try to define our worth, through class, color, or background, our true value isn't something they can give or take. It's something we must recognize for ourselves. Sometimes, the greatest act of strength is not in fighting back, but in choosing to rise without bitterness. Maya didn't let her pain define her. She let it refine her. She chose purpose over pride, grace over vengeance, and leadership over victimhood. And in doing so, she became something far greater than anyone expected. Not a symbol of revenge, but a symbol of transformation. We all face moments where the world tells us we don't belong, where we're made to feel small, invisible, less than. But the truth is, no one can erase who we are unless we allow them to. And sometimes, the most powerful thing we can do is to stand up, not to prove others wrong, but to prove to ourselves that we were right all along. So wherever you are watching from, remember this. Your story isn't over when someone walks away. It's only just beginning. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear your story too. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss another powerful journey like Maya's. Thank you for being here.